Hello, everybody. Welcome back. Hope everyone can hear me. This will be our final class in this 6-part mini-series, live from the Biblical Museum of Natural History. And the topic for this final class is the camel, the hare, and the hyrax. And we're going to be based, for the most part, in our Hall of Kosher classification. And this was where we spent some time talking about fish and so on, but now today we're going to focus on a very particular subtopic. So let's start again with, let's go back and review the laws of kashrut about mammals. Okay, so with mammals, here we go. That's kind of the sign here. The laws of kashrut for mammals, the Torah tells us, speak to the children of Israel, saying, this is the animal that you may eat, all the animals on the earth. Whichever animal forms a hoof, and its hooves are split, and it brings up its cud, you may eat. Right? Kol mafreset parsa, v'shisat shesta parasa, ma'alat ger v'abahema otat ochelu. Okay, so these are, it's commonly said that this is two signs of kosher animals, but it's actually three. Right? There are three signs being described here. The first is mafreset parsa, that it has to have a hoof, as opposed to, say, an orangutan that has a foot, or a kangaroo that has paws. Right? It has to have a hoof. It has to be shasat shesa, has to be split. Right? So a hoof of a zebra is no good because it's not shasat shesa, it's not split. Only the foot of a something like a deer or a goat, right? And they have split hooves. That's the kind of hoof that we need. And by the way, there is some dispute on this, on exactly what's going on with the term mafreset parsa. Rashi understands the word parsa to mean a foot, and the word mafreset to mean split. So it has, and then shasat shesa means it has to be split all the way through. Right, so according to Rashi, again, parsa is a foot, mafreset is split, and shasat shesa means split all the way down. According to most other Rishonim, on the other hand, mafreset parsa isn't talking about a foot, it's talking about a hoof, and the words are the same thing. Mafreset does not mean split. Mafreset parsa means it hoofs a hoof, or as we'd say in English, it forms a hoof. And then shasat shesa means that it's split. And we'll see the relevance of this later. And then the third requirement is ma'ale gera. It has to bring up the cud. So what does that mean? Well, it's normally understood to refer to the phenomenon of rumination. Right? There's certain animals that are ruminants. They have multiple stomachs. And when they graze a whole bunch of grass. Right? And they go to a safe place and they bring it up and they chew it and swallow it again. And it's going through different stomachs as part of that process. I have a video of it here. Oops. Just the camera. All right, so here we have a geranuk. And this is a useful animal to learn about Ma'ale Gera because it has a very, very skinny neck. But because it has such a skinny neck, you can follow the whole process very clearly. It just swallowed a bit of the cud there, but let's wait a bit more. We'll see more of it. Chewing, chewing, chewing. Right, and then wait for it. In a couple of seconds, it will happen. And any second now, and go. Right, so you see it went down. Now 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, up it comes. Right, so that is chewing the cud. Right, and basically the idea of chewing the cud, well, there's a few ideas. Right, number one, the idea is that it's not spending a long time in the open where it's vulnerable to predators, right? Because these are herbivores, these animals, they're not predators, they can't spend a long time in the open. And number two, the idea is that the grass is not very nutritious, right? Very little nutrition. So how do you get a good nutritional meal out of something that's not very nutritious? So basically, there's two types of digestion that you need to do. You need to do a chemical digestion in the stomach, but you also need to do mechanical digestion in the mouth. Right, where in the mouth you're breaking it apart and exposing it more to saliva, and it's constantly alternating between the two. Right, so it's alternating the digestion in the mouth with digestion in the stomach. That's a characteristic of ruminants. All right, so those are the signs of kosher animals. Now, next, what the Torah does is it proceeds to list 4 animals that only have, well, okay, I'll say one of the two kosher signs. Again, it's really three signs, right? It's hooves, which are split, and bringing up the cud. But hooves and split are commonly grouped together as one thing, right? Split hooves. So this is more convenient to talk about it that way. So we'll talk about it as being two signs, right? Split hooves and bringing up the cud. The Torah then mentions that there are four animals that only have one of these signs. Hold on a second. There we go. Right. However, this you may not eat. From those that bring up the cud and from those that have formed hooves, the camel, for it brings up the cud but does not form a hoof, it is unclean for you. And the hyrax, for it brings up the cud but does not form a hoof, it is unclean for you. And the hare, for it brings up the cud but does not form a hoof, it is unclean for you. And the pig, for it has the other way around as with the pig, right? It has cloven hooves but does not bring up the cud, it is unclean for you. Okay, so those are animals that only have one of the kosher signs, right? And therefore you can't eat. Now this topic is, oh boy, this topic has occupied many years of my life. It's been of profound significance in my life. I actually got married because of this topic. We'll see if we have time for that story. And it all started about, let's see, how long have I been married? Being up to 24 years. So it started 25 years ago. Okay, 25 years ago, when I was, back then, I was nearly 25 years old, right? Half my lifetime ago. And I was writing and teaching, and I started to specialize in this topic of animals in the Torah. And I got a question from an outreach organization about this topic. They were using this topic to prove the divinity of Torah, and they were getting lots of questions on it. And they wanted me to research, come up with the answers. So how is this topic used for to show the divinity, the divine origins of Torah? So it's used by a number of outreach organizations, less so now than it used to be because people have read my research on it, where I've shown that it's not. I'll spoil the ending. It's not a good proof. But the argument is twofold, and the arguments go like this. Number one, how on earth is the author of the Torah so bold as to say that there are only 4 animals which have one of the 2 kosher signs? Maybe there's more. Who would ever, there's all kinds of animals out there in the world. Nobody ever knows, would ever say, we know all the animals that are out there. How can the Torah be so bold as to say that these are the only 4 such animals in the world? All right, so only a divine author could take such a risk. Because a human author, if the Torah was authored by a human, and there's a risk of being disproved. But if you're God, all right, so you're not going to be disproved. You know that these are the only animals in the world, so you can afford to say so. So that's one proof that the Torah is divinely written. And the second part of this proof is that it's true, right? That it's true that on the thousands of years since the Torah was given, no more animals have ever been found that have one of the 2 kosher signs. Right, so here we have a twofold proof that Torah is min hashamayim. The Torah has divine origins. Now the question is, of course, then, is this indeed a proof? So let's start off by asking the following: what is the nature of the proof exactly? Is it that these are the only 4 animals out of how many? What are we going to say? These are the only 4 out of how many? I'd like you to suggest your answers, your suggestions.
Thousands.
Thousands? What is it? Just on the order of magnitude, and if you can give a right number, I want to know what it is. Is it these are the only 4 out of 10? These are the only 4 out of 1,000, out of 1 million, out of 1 billion? What are these? These are the only animals. 4. These are the only 4 out of how many?
Middle Eastern animals.
No, the idea is that the argument goes that these are the only 4 in the whole world. So the only 4 out of how many? How many animals are there in the world?
Tens of thousands?
Millions. I think there are millions of animals.
Millions.
Millions?
We're only talking about animals, aren't we? We're not talking about insects and so on. They're separate. So
Okay, very good. Right. We're not talking about insects. Right. If you talk about insects, then there's 100 million species. But we're not saying insects, right? We're talking about these because that's not the category being discussed. Okay. So we're not talking about insects. So somebody suggested mammals. Okay, we're talking about mammals. So how many types of mammals are there? How many species of mammals are there? Anyone know? 5,000. Okay, approximately 5,000 species of mammals. Okay, so it's 4 out of 5,000. Yep. No, not 4 out of 5,000, right? Because not every mammal, this is behemoth and chayot, right? It's not mammals. Remember, the Torah's classification system is different, right? If we think about birds, right, I believe we discussed birds in the previous week. Right, so the Torah's list of birds, who do we have at the end? A bat. Right, a bat is in the list of birds, right? Because it's not bird, it's oath. It's winged creatures. So we're not talking. So we can't include bats in this list. How many types of bats are there? Anyone know how many species of bats? The answer is,
Hundreds.
Hundreds, many hundreds, 1,000, 1,000. Right, there's 1,000 species of bats. So we have to knock bats off. So we're down from 5,000 to 4,000. All right, now, so is that correct? Is it out of 4,000? Are there any other mammals that are not in this category?
what about marine animals like whales and porpoises?
Correct. So whales would not be in this category either. They're not behemoth or chayot. So whales, dolphins, we're going to knock all those off. All right, let's say about 200 species. Okay, so we've gone from, now we're at 3,800. Anything else? We're disqualifying flying mammals. We're disqualifying marine mammals. What other types of mammals are not behemoth and chayot? Humans. Okay, fine. So we're down to 3,799. But we're going to knock off another large number. There's another category of mammals that are not behemoth and chayot.
What about
apart from marine creatures, what else?
What about rodents, little tiny creepy crawly things?
Excellent. Very good. Very good. So in our past session, we discussed about shuratzim, which were a different category. That was small mammals, rodents, even some carnivores like martins. So that's another approximately 2,000. Lots and lots of types of rodents out there. All kinds of mice and voles and shrews, all that kind of thing. There's all shuratzim. They're not part of this list either. So now we're down, and keeping count, now we're down to about 1,000. Okay? So it's 4 out of 1,000. Yes? 4 out of 1,000? Yes or no?
Okay.
No, the word right, someone's writing it out. Behemoth does not apply to mice and rats, right? Those are shuratzim. That's not the category being discussed. So is it 4 out of 1,000? So no, we're actually going to knock off a lot of this 1,000 also, and I'll tell you why. So one of the animals in this list is the camel, right? How many types of camels are there?
2.
There's 2, right? You got the Bactrian camel that has 2 humps, and you've got the dromedary that has 1 hump, the Arabian camel. So does that mean that Torah's list of 4 is not correct? That really there's 5? There's 5. There's 2 types of camels. So doesn't that mean there's actually 5 animals with 1 sign, not 4? The answer is no, because they're both just camels, right? The fact that they're different species in zoology does not mean that they're different types in the Torah classification, right? Because as we've said in the Shurats, as we discussed in our previous class, right, the Torah's form of classification is broader, right? Just like just like in zoology, there's no absolute objective definition of a species. Brown bears and grizzly bears, are they 2 species or 1 species? There's no right answer to that question. They're very similar. They can interbreed, but they look a bit different, have a different habit. So do you call that 1 species or not? So it depends if you're a splitter or a lumper. Right? Those are the 2 terms to describe the different trends amongst taxonomists. Do you prefer to lump things together or split things apart? But there's no objectively correct answer to that. Right? So with the Torah, the Torah's classification is very broad. Right? 1,000 species of mice, and they're all achbar. 1,000 species of bat, and they're all the atale, right? So 2 species of camel, right? They're all just the camel. Pigs, right? Lots of species of pigs, right? Behind me, we have, who's this guy? What kind of pig is that? It's a warthog, right? Pumbaa from the Lion King. Put a little picture of Pumbaa over there in our exhibit, just to give people a frame of reference. Right, there's about a dozen different types of pigs. There's wild boar, there's red river hogs, right, all different types of Javan forest hogs, right? Lots of different types of pigs, but they're all pig. It's all the same min in the Torah. So we're not talking about species to begin with, right? We're talking about types, right? Broad types. So it's not 4 out of 1,000. Even if we knock off, all the rodents and all the bats and everything, it's not 4 out of 1,000. It's 4 out of, well, how many types of behemoth and chayot are there? There's no really clear way to measure that exactly, but you're talking about approximately 50. Right? Maybe 100, depending if you want to be liberal, right? 100. So it's 4 out of 100. Right? So again, I'm just saying that anytime you want to try and use an argument, you got to be sure you're using your terms correctly. We're not talking about species. Right? It's not 4 out of 5,000 mammals. When I hear this presented, people say 4 out of 5,000. It's not 4 out of 5,000. It's 4 out of a couple of dozen. All right. And remember, people are changing the definition of type, to accommodate this. All right. So we have a lot of flexibility with the definition of a type. Okay, but let's see still, even if it's only 4 out of a couple of dozen, is this still a good proof? So the first part of the proof, remember, is to say that the Torah is putting its reputation on the line by saying that these are the only animals. Is that what the Torah says? Let's take a look at the Slifkin again. Right? It doesn't say that. It doesn't say these are the only ones. It just lists 4 animals. It doesn't say they're the only ones in the world. So, and the simple question is, well, why is it listing 4 animals, right? If it's already been said that you need to have both kosher signs, two signs, so why then specify? Obviously these animals are not kosher, but the Rishonim say why it's specified then. It says that the problem is that these are animals that other people in the region were eating, other tribes, other nations, right? They eat camels, they eat hares, they eat hyraxes, they eat pigs. Right? These were popular items, so the Torah wanted to, really highlight that you can't eat them. Right? Even though they look a little bit kosher, right? But a little bit kosher is not good enough, and that's why it has to spell them out. But it's not spelling them out to say these are the only ones. So people who say that the Torah is saying these are the only ones, where do they get that from? So they didn't just make it up. They're basing it in a Gemara, right? Because the Gemara does seem to say that these are the only ones in the world. The Gemara says that if you look at the nuances of the Hebrew, right, the Gemara derives from the fact that it says who. Et hagamal kimala gera hu. Et hashafan kimala gera hu. Et ha'anevet kimala gera hi. The hazeh kimala kasa hu. This, and this. So the Gemara derives from that these are the only such animals. Which the Gemara takes for a halachic ramification, meaning that let's say you find an animal and its feet are, say, mutilated. Right? It's just, whatever reason, it was born with a birth defect. The Gemara often discusses far-fetched cases to bring out points of law. And so you find an animal, its legs are mutilated, you can't examine the legs. But if you know that it chews the cud, and you know that it's not one of these animals, then you can eat it, right? Because again, if it chews the cud and you can't check its feet for some reason, so you're not sure, does it have split hooves or not? Could be an animal that does not have split hooves, but as long as you know it's not one of these, you can eat it. Because these are the Gemara says, Shalit ba'olamo yudea, the ruler of the world knows that these are the only such animals. Right? And therefore, if you find an animal with one sign and you know it's not one of these, you can eat it. So that's where they're getting it from, the idea that these are the only such animals in the world. It's from the Gemara. Now, first of all, already, this is something that you can't use to prove the divinity of the Torah. Because it's not something explicit in the Torah, right? It's something that the Gemara uses in its own ideas of Talmudic exegeses, darshans, figures it out. But it's not something that's explicit in the Torah. It's something that's in the Torah Shebaal Peh. Right? So you can't say that the author of the Torah is putting his credibility in the line by staking out a claim. There is no claim being staked out in the Pesukim. It's only the Gemara that makes this claim based on its understanding of the Pasuk. But that's not something that if somebody had not already bought into the authority of the Gemara, it's not something they would accept. Okay, so first of all, so there's no claim being made here. But the question is still, but is it true? And is it true that these are the only such animals in the world? So, actually, before we get that, I have to get to something else. There's another Gemara that they're mixing into this, which is that the Gemara later says, Mikan teshuva la'omer ein Torah min hashamayim. This is a response to someone who denies the divinity of Torah. Right, but what? What is a response? So the Gemara speaks about, basically, there's different texts in the Gemara, different sources. But basically, the Gemara seems to be saying is that how does Moshe Rabbeinu just know so much about the anatomy of animals? How's he detailing the anatomy of animals? It says, was he a hunter? Moshe wasn't a hunter. How did he know so much about animals? So it says this is a response to say that someone who says Torah is not from heaven. Again, so it's not proving anything. It's not saying there's an argument here from the exclusivity of the list. These are the only such animals in the world. It's just saying, look, the Torah is going into a lot of biological detail. Is that something that regular people know about? Not the strongest proof in the world. Right? Just something to say. But people want to say that, no, it's talking about this idea that these are the only such animals in the world. So is it true that these are the only such animals in the world? So the answer is, what we have to do is look at first of it all of what is the very definition of chewing the cud, right, and split hooves. Because it's true, if you ask, are there other animals that are ruminants and don't have split hooves? The answer seems to be no. But we have to take a look at things a little bit closer and explain what I mean. Oh, first of all, sorry, I'm so sorry. I went out of order here. We need to backtrack a bit to the camel. So when we're talking about how many types there are, well, the camel's an interesting one to talk about. So we don't have a live camel at the museum. Got this lovely model, right? Camel, right? It chews the cud. Does not have split hooves, right? So it's not kosher. I was in Dubai, right? So this whole store selling chocolates. The only thing the entire store sold was chocolates. Right, this one and a smaller one, right? Gold wrapped. And what's so special about this chocolate? Well, the special thing is not that it's shaped like a camel. The special thing is that it's made out of camel, right? Made out of camel milk, right? Which is something you can buy in Dubai. Camelicious, pasteurized camel milk. So I wanted to have this as an exhibit of, why the Torah is warning us as being not kosher. Right? And there actually are people who eat camel milk. So when I was in Dubai, I thought I was going to go into the store and buy this. And my wife said, but isn't it maris ha'ayin? Right, maris ha'ayin means you can't go into a treif restaurant because if somebody sees you, even if you're not eating the food, because if somebody sees you, they'll think, oh, it's okay to eat here. Right, come on, we're in Dubai. Right, no, this is not Tel Aviv. No one's going to be thinking of anything of seeing me, an Orthodox Jew, buying some camel milk chocolate. But anyway, so I was standing in line with the chocolate, and the guy standing in front of me in line waiting to pay, he says to me, he says, I always buy this chocolate when I come to Dubai. It's the most delicious chocolate I've ever seen. But that's not quite how he said it. He said, it's the most delicious. The way he said it, I can't do the accent. But I was like, Ata me'aretz? Ata Israeli? And he said, yeah, I'm from Haifa. So at this point, I was like, oh no. I was like, it's not kosher, right? I said, I'm only buying it for a museum exhibit. It's not kosher. And he hit the roof with me. He went berserk. מה זה קשור? מה יש בכל דבר? מה יש בתוך מים? אתה שותה מים מהכנרת? מה יש בתוך הכנרת? אתה לא יודע. I just started off in this whole angry rant that how do we know what's in any of the food we eat? All right, didn't go anywhere. But I did see that it is legitimate to be concerned, even in Dubai, about buying non-kosher food products. Anyway, as someone mentioned earlier, wait, can we see the sign here? Let's get the camera in a bit closer. Right, so here we have the camel's foot. Right, you see this has nails in the front. Right, it doesn't have a hoof. All right, but then also, what about llamas and alpacas and vicunas and guanacos? Right? All the ones in the llama family. They chew the cud, and they do not have hooves. Right? Here we have the foot of llamas and alpacas. Right? They don't have a hoof. It's interesting. Their foot is split all the way, and this is how we get back to what we discussed earlier about the difference between Rashi and others explaining it. Right? According to Rashi, the only requirement is that the foot has to be completely split. So according to Rashi's definition, llamas would actually be kosher, because Rashi has no requirement of a hoof. Rashi just requires that the foot be completely split. But as I said, most of the Rishonim explain that there's a requirement of a hoof. That parasa means a hoof, not a foot, and it has to form a proper hoof. Right? And even though llamas have a totally split foot, they don't have hooves. It's just claws. Right? So that's essentially the problem with a camel. It does not have a hoof. Okay, so these are all, they have one sign. But what about, don't we have some extras here? We have extras here that are not camels, they're llamas. So we'll say, okay, but they're still in the broader camel family. Right? They are in the broader camel family. They're all in the camelid family. Right? They're the American cousins. Right? So they're in the camel family. But already we see that we're being very, very flexible with the definition of a type. Right? If we're saying gamal can even include not only these two types of camels, but also these much smaller animals called llamas, and we're being very generous with our definition of a type, and therefore to say, well, these are the only ones, there's no others, well, yeah, because every time you find another one, you just fit it into this pre-existing category. All right, so it's already weakening the proof considerably, because we're seeing we have so much flexibility with type. Now, but then we have another problem, which is this. Two of the animals in the list are the hare and the hyrax, right? Here's a hare. There we go. This is a hare, right? This is, I think, what Americans call a jackrabbit, right? In Europe, we call this a hare, but Americans call this a jackrabbit. It's like a very, very large rabbit, right? And it runs very fast, much faster than rabbits. And whereas rabbits hide in holes underground, right? Hares just run. They don't hide, they just run away. Okay, and we have the shafan, which is the hyrax, right, who is conveniently posing for us right back there. I think we spoke about hyraxes in the first class, didn't we? Did we do that? Anyone remind me? Did we speak about hyrax?
I don't think
huh?
so. I don't.
No, we're talking about animals of Israel. We didn't speak about hyraxes? Anyway, get back to the shafan now. Still poking out there. Okay. All right. Now, the problem is that if you look in any zoology book, it will say that these animals are not ruminants. They're not. Like ruminants, cows, deer, sheep, even giraffe, right? Those are all ruminants. Hyraxes and hares are not ruminants. So forget about these four being the only four animals with one kosher sign. You haven't even got four. You've only got two. You've only got the camel and the pig. There seems to be a zoological mistake here with the hare and the hyrax. So not only now do we not have a proof that the Torah is divine, but we, God forbid, have a proof here that it's not divine, that there's actually a mistake in the Torah. And this was the question being posed to various outreach organizations, so they were asking me to help solve. So the initial approach that someone wanted to take was to say, well, how do you know the shafan and the arnevet are really the hare and the hyrax? Maybe they're not. Maybe there's some different type of animal that's extinct that we don't know about. And that's how they wanted to get out of it. The problem is as follows. Yes, there are many animals in the Torah whose identities we can't be certain about. Right? When we spoke about the shiratzim in the previous session, right? All these small animals, the chomet, right? And the right, and the others in that list, right? So it was very hard to be sure what they are. With the shafan and the arnevet, we are very, very clear on what they are. It's abundantly clear, right? And firstly, we're going to see there's a lot of evidence for what they are. And second of all, it's not like there's an alternative, right? Just like when we spoke about tchelet, right? You have to consider, what is the alternative? What, there's some other creature well known for producing blue dye in the ancient world that there's no other record of, right? Just like we said with dag cherev, with the swordfish. What, there's some other fish that has a sword which there's absolutely no record of, right? It becomes far-fetched in the extreme. Right? We know a lot about the animals that used to live in the land of Israel. We know a lot about them. We have remains, we have skeletons. We know a lot about the kinds of animals that exist in the world, about the groups of animals. So you can't just say, oh, it's some unknown extinct animal. We know a lot about what kind of animals are out there. Right? And to say that there's another animal, which is very unusual, that it's a proper ruminant and does not have hooves, right? Something that's really a ruminant and does not have hooves. And we've never found any representative of this family anywhere in the world. Is very, very far-fetched from a zoological perspective. What I want to focus on now is the fact the evidence that we know that these animals are the animals being discussed. All right, so let's start with our hare here, the Arnevet. So the Arnevet is not only mentioned here here, it's also mentioned in the Gemara. Very interesting Gemara about how when the Torah was translated into Greek, so that Ptolemy gathered 70 Jewish sages, and he wanted them to translate the Torah into Greek, and he had them do it, individually. But a wonderful thing happened. They all realized that to translate certain terms into Greek would be problematic. Right? So it says they changed the translation to make it non-problematic for Ptolemy. And it says that one example of the translation they changed was the Arnevet. It says that Arnevet was the name in Greek. Right? The Greek translation of Arnevet sounded like someone in Ptolemy's family. And you don't want to say that, Ptolemy's family member is a trafe jackrabbit. Doesn't sound good. So they, instead of translating it into the Greek, it says they gave they gave a certain phrase that refers to the hare, a nickname for the Arnevet instead. And what was the nickname? Seirat haraglayim. Right, hairy foot. And if you look in the Septuagint, the Greek translation of Torah, so for hare it says dasipus, right, which is Greek for furry foot, hairy foot. So now here we have two pieces of evidence that the Arnevet is the hare. So first of all, that they didn't want to translate it into Greek. The Greek word for a hare is lagos. Right, in scientific literature, this family, they're lagomorphs. Right, Lagos is Greek for hare. And Ptolemy's father was called Lagos. That was his family name. He was Ptolemy Lagos. So we see they didn't want to translate it because that would be the word for hare, which then becomes something that's a tray food and disrespectful for Ptolemy. Second of all, what did they translate it as instead? Hairy foot. Okay, I just realized that this taxidermy mount of the hare is going to be completely unhelpful here because it's nailed down to the stand. So I can't show you its feet. But I want you to imagine the foot of hares or rabbits in the same family, right? Same min, same type. Right, so think about Thumper from Bambi. Right? Think about Thumper, think about his foot, right? And you see like the pads on his feet. Right? So the funny thing is that is not how rabbits and hares are. Every single other animal has pads on its feet. Right? You look at the paws of your cat, of your dog, you see it has pads. But rabbits and hares do not. They don't have any pads. It's completely covered in fur. Right? So if you wanted to come up with a unique way of describing a hare, hairy foot would be a great way to do it. They're the only animals that have hairy feet, have furry feet. Right? So again, the fact that the sages chose to translate Arneves as Seirat haraglayim, as hairy foot, again, wonderful evidence that the hare is the animal being discussed. Okay, so we're not going to be able to say, no, the Arnevet. Plus also in other languages, right? Arnava is the name for the hare in other local languages, right? And we've seen many rabbinical authorities, look to other languages as ways to identify the animals of the Torah, because many of them have the same name in other local languages. All right, so we have an abundance of evidence and an unbroken tradition of the Arnevet refers to the hare. So what are we going to do with the fact that the Torah says that the hare is ma'ale gera? It's a ruminant, but hares are not ruminants. So there are two approaches that are taken to this. One approach is that hares do something very unusual called cecotrophy, which means that they excrete special of the pellets, of the fecal pellets, fall into two categories. There's regular poop, which they don't do anything with, But there's another type of poop, another type of fecal pellet they produce, which they re-ingest. Why do they re-ingest it? Because they want to get another round of nutritional value out of it. Right, what did we say earlier? Grass and so on has very little nutritional value, or rather, it's very hard to extract the nutritional value from grass and things like that. So regular ruminants, they bring it back up from their stomach to the mouth for another round of digestion. Well, hares do the same thing. They also return it from the stomach to the mouth, but they do it the long way round. Right? They pass it out of their body and then eat it again. Kids, don't try this at home. Right? So in fact, in zoology, it's often known as pseudo-rumination. Right? Because it's effectively the same thing. It's returning the plant matter for another round. Right? And therefore, some want to say that that is why the hare is described as ma'ale gera. Personally, I find that a difficult explanation because it doesn't work with the term. The term ma'ale gera has a meaning. Ma'ale means bringing up, i.e. bringing up in the throat. And gera appears, not 100%, but appears to be having to do with the word goron, the word throat. And it means bringing up in the throat, which is not what hares do. So I'm not comfortable with that explanation. The explanation I prefer is that of David Zvi Hoffman, who says that hares certainly look like they're ma'ale gera. You look at it, if you ever get a chance, it's actually hard to see them in the wild. They're so fast they run away. But if you look at it from a distance, often they'll be, twitching, chewing their mouths, moving their faces like this. And therefore, they look like they're ma'ale gera. And remember, for thousands of years, nobody had an issue with the Torah saying that hares are ma'ale gera, because everyone was like, well, yeah, they are. You can see they are. Right, so there's a principle, Dibra Torah Kalashan B'nei Adam. Torah speaks in human language. Right, the Torah speaks about sunrise and sunset. Swiftly go the years. Right, even though the sun is not rising and setting, right, it's the earth that's moving. But from the human perspective, the sun is rising and setting. I can give you many other examples too. The Torah speaks about the sky as being like a rakia, firmament, a dome. So Hirsch said, that's speaking from the human perspective. Right, the Torah speaks using human language. So since humans would refer to the hare as being, would and did, right, refer to the hare as being a ruminant, right, because of the way it chews. So that's how the Torah classified. But what do we say about now let's go to the hyrax. All right, so what about this shafan? Are we sure that this is the shafan? Could it maybe be a different animal? So I just want to go around to the other side of the exhibit. Okay, how do we know that a shafan is a hyrax? Maybe it's, again, some other unknown extinct animal. So once again, we are absolutely certain that the shafan is a hyrax, and there's a pasuk in Mishlei that proves it absolutely. Sorry, there's a pasuk in Mishlei. There's also one in Tehillim. So let's start with the one in Tehillim. This is in Baruch Nafshi that we say in Rosh Chodesh. Arim hagavohim la'ya'elim. The high hills are for the ya'elim. What's a ya'el? Ya'el is an ibex. Right, ibex, the thing with the big curved horns, right? It's the logo of the museum. Right, the ibex. And the pasuk continues. Drop my phone. Again. Mounting it back on the stand. Good. Am I upside down? No? Okay, good. Okay. All right. The pasuk continues. La'im master l'shpanim. The rocks are a hiding place for the shafan. Now, what is a shafan? So many translations will say rabbit, but it can't be a rabbit because it says here that the shafanim hide in rocks. Rabbits don't hide in rocks. Rabbits hide in burrows. Right? And plus, there's no rabbits within 1,000 miles of here. Right? Rabbits do not live anywhere near the Middle East. So what is a shafan? So we know two things about the shafan from this pasuk. Number one, we know that it's something that hides in rocks. Well, that already narrows it down tremendously. But the other thing we know is that it's associated with ibex, right? Because it's appearing in the same pasuk. Now, where in Israel do you see ibex? There's a place in Israel that's famous for them. You know what that place is?
The Negev, in Gedi.
Eddie.
Gedi, right. And Ein Gedi is somewhere that we know David HaMelech, who authored this, that he spent time. right? It says when David HaMelech was hiding from his enemies, it says in the Slifkin, right? It says that he hid in Ein Gedi amongst the rocks with the Ya'elim. Right? So we know clearly that we're talking about Ein Gedi. Now, if you go to Ein Gedi, you see the Ya'elim on the hills, and you also see little animals hiding in rocks. Hyraxes. Oh, it's a bit dark in there. Let's see if we can. You see them, or is it too dark? Oh. All right, this is our. See, the hyraxes, the other, before we saw them from the other side of the cage, right? But we know that they always like to hide in here. Hyraxes love to hide in rock crevices, so we made this artificial rock crevice for them to hide. Okay? So, there's no doubt, right? There's absolutely no doubt that the shafan is the hyrax. So what are we going to do about the description of it being ma'ale gera? So it doesn't eat its special poop pellets like hares do. What we can say again is that it looks like it's chewing. Because I've kept hyraxes now for over 15 years. Right? I mean, the last 10 years at the museum, but before the museum, the hyraxes that we have here, they lived in my house. I built a special enclosure adjoining my living room. Basically, we knocked through the wall of the living room to make a window, and we built an aviary. My wife didn't really have much role in this. This was my wishigas. We built a huge cage adjoining the living room to keep animals in. And I got hyrax is normally not something you can buy, not something it's legal to keep. But I got a permit from the Nature Authority to keep hyraxes in this enclosure. So the point is, I was able to watch them. Right, for years, sitting at the Shabbos table, I had it all set up. I could just look through the window and see the hyraxes in this enclosure. And I would see they would do this chewing movement. They were not. It wasn't at the time when I was feeding them. They were just sitting up in the rock, and they would do this chewing movement. Right. So again, it's something that definitely, Dibra Torah Koloshim B'nai Adam. Right. They certainly, look like they're bringing up the cud. Right. And more than that, eventually, what I certainly noticed was that it's not just that they were doing a chewing movement. So the question is, what is that chewing movement? What's going on exactly? It's been observed by certain hyrax scientists. Right? And some of them say, oh, well, it's maybe some kind of, threat display, like grinding their teeth, maybe some kind of communication going on there. But what I actually noticed was that there was some movement in their throat. Right, that right before they did the chewing movement, there was clear movement in the throat. I managed to video this. Right, I think I posted it online somewhere. Can't remember where. But you can actually see movement in the throat going on before the chewing. So what's going on with that? So I did more research and I found out there's a phenomenon called merycism. Merycism is where animals regurgitate. It's not full rumination like cows and sheep do, where they're doing it for hours and hours. It's a much smaller process. And it doesn't involve multiple stomachs. It just means regurgitating a little bit of food in the mouth, chewing it a bit and swallowing it again. The function of it is not clear. I think maybe it stimulates the production of saliva, which helps with digestion. It's not clear, but it's a phenomenon that's been discovered in kangaroos, in koalas, right? And I spoke to hyrax experts. I said, "Is this what is going on with the hyraxes?" They said, "Yeah, maybe that's what's going on." Because whereas others had wanted to say it's just a communication gesture, but there does seem to be movement in the throat immediately beforehand. Okay, so this solves how the Torah describes the shafan as being ma'ale gera, right? Two explanations, either because it looks like it is, or because it really is bringing up small amounts of food. But the problem is, so we've solved, the question that, that with a scientific error in the Torah, we've solved that, right? But once we've said that ma'ale gera does not just mean rumination, but we're going to expand the definition, that it can also include merycism, bringing up small amounts, or it can also include anything that looks like ma'ale gera. So then we have more animals, right? Kangaroos and koalas. Right? Kangaroos and koalas do these chewing movements, right? Do merycism, and they don't have hooves. They don't have split hooves. So we've got more animals. Right? So it's not only 4. There's more. So again, this isn't a problem with the Torah, because the Torah doesn't say there's only 4 animals in the world. The Torah just lists the 4, right, that are being eaten by nearby nations, and says even though they're, everyone's eating them, they're all of age, and they look a bit kosher, but they're not fully kosher. The Torah doesn't say these are the only animals in the world. We don't have a problem with this. But you can't use this to prove, that the Torah is divine, because they're not the only such animals. But what are we going to do with the Gemara? What about the Gemara deducing that these are the only 4 such animals in the world? All right, what are we going to do with that? So it wouldn't necessarily be the end of the world to say the Gemara is wrong. Right? Obviously, that's one of the topics that my books were notoriously banned for. But certainly, many authorities will not have a problem with that. I don't think this falls into that category. The Gemara is not wrong. I'll tell you why the Gemara is not wrong. When the Gemara makes rules about animals, right? Even blanket rules. You know, what is the nature of these rules that the Gemara is giving? I'll give you an example. The Gemara makes a rule that, you know, if you want to know if an animal chews the cud, right? How do you know if an animal chews the cud? So you can sit and watch it, right? Like we were doing, you know, with the gearing up, we were watching it. But often you don't have time to do that. The Gemara says, well, that's fine. You don't need to watch it. You can just check its teeth. Right? You can just check its jaw. And by looking at the jaw, you can know if an animal chews the cud. Right? And I feel what the Gemara means. The Gemara points out that chew the cud, such as cows, do not have any upper teeth. Right? They have molars, but they have no upper incisors. Right? As opposed to a horse, right? A horse does have upper incisors. Gemara says, you want to know if an animal chews the cud, you can check to see if it has upper incisors. Now the problem is, right, here we have an animal that does not have upper incisors, but it's definitely not kosher. What's this? You know what this skull is from? Very unusual skull.
The bird?
No, it's not a bird.
Anteater.
An anteater. Correct. Skull of an anteater. No upper teeth. Certainly not a kosher, not a ruminant. And then the other end of the spectrum, you have this animal. The Gemara says that anything that does have upper teeth is not kosher. But here we have a muntjac kind of deer. I mean, it does have upper canines. And yet, it's very unusual for a deer, but it has upper canines. And it is kosher. I'll split the hooves and choose the cut. So that's a Chinese muntjac. So does this make a problem for the Gemara? No. Because when the Gemara says you can rely on this teeth rule, it doesn't, not only doesn't Chazal know about the muntjac or the anteater, even if you would have told them, they wouldn't have cared. Why? Because who cares if on the other side of the planet, you know, there's such an animal? That's not what Chazal were concerned about. And I can prove it to you with birds. With birds, so the Torah gives certain signs by which to identify kosher birds. Right, the Torah doesn't give the signs, but Chazal, the sages, gave signs. And there's some back and forth in the Gemara about how exactly you interpret and implement these signs. And at one point, the Gemara says, hold on, according to the way we're talking about these signs, the problem is that there's 2 of the birds in the Torah's list of treif birds that have these signs. So how can you say you can eat a bird if you have this sign? 2 of the treif birds have these signs. You know what the Gemara answers? It says, who cares? Those birds are not found in the Yishuv, in the settled area. They live in remote areas far away. Right, it's amazing. Right, this is a bird that you know it could go wrong. Right, you're giving people laws, which they could end up in eating a treif bird. But Chazal say, what are the chances? Chazal were incredibly practical. He did not, you know, nowadays people are so fussy, you know, what about there's a 1 in a million chance you might go wrong? Chazal were much more practical than that. Chazal did not care about a 1 in a million chance. They didn't care about the rules would lead you astray if you're in some far remote country. Right? Their rules were made for the normal situation, right? People living in the established settlements. They couldn't care less about, they didn't even care about these birds in the Torah, which were within the world of the Torah, just in faraway places. They certainly wouldn't have cared about China, right? A Chinese muntjac or the South American anteater. And they certainly wouldn't have cared about the koala or the kangaroo. All right, so when the Gemara makes these laws, it says these things that these are the only animals in the world, it's talking about the world that is relevant to the Torah. All right, and in the world that is relevant to the Torah, it happens to be true. Right, even though the Torah doesn't say these are the only 4, they are the only 4. All right, but the Torah is not speaking about the entire planet Earth. Right, it's just not part of the world of the Torah. All right, and there's other proofs you can bring from that. You know, the Gemara says that if you make a vow not to drink from the Euphrates, so it says you can't drink from any river in the world, right? Because maybe it's a tributary of the Euphrates. Now, it certainly doesn't mean you can't drink the Mississippi. Right? Mississippi is not a tributary of the Euphrates. Right? It's talking about the world of the Torah. It's not talking about the universe. It's not talking about the Milky Way. It's talking about the world of the Torah, which is the area where the Jews lived. Right? So this topic, right, it's not a proof that the Torah is divine. The Torah does not make any claims about being the only such four animals in the world, and they're not the only such four animals in the world. It's not a proof that the Torah is not divine, because the term ma'ale gera does not just need to mean ruminant, right? It can have much broader meanings, Dibra Torah, Colossian, B'nai Adam. So it's not something that should be used either way. Right? And but the bigger lesson is, you see how careful you have to be and how complicated it is to interpret Torah terminology. You can't just make bold claims, because everything in the Torah, there's always 4 layers to uncover. Right? There's always a lot. You always have to be very careful in trying to understand what terms mean in the Torah. What is a type of animal? What is an animal that you mentioned? How do we identify it? What are the terms, the biological descriptions? There's always so many layers of complexity that you have to be very wary about making any kind of bold claims. Since this is the end of the series, so I will wrap up with a story, I promise. So, like I said, when I was originally asked to research this topic many years ago, so I was very excited. Right? I was like, hey, they're consultant, and I'm going to be they're getting all these questions, and I'm going to be able to answer these questions, and fly the flag for the Torah and everything for these organizations. And I was very upset when I found out that it's actually not a proof, and that these organizations had been sloppy in using a proof that they hadn't properly researched. And so I wrote up my results and called it The Camel, the Hare, and the Hyrax. Later published as a book, but at the time, I just wrote up a report and sent it around the various organizations that were trying to use this as a proof. And some of them accepted it and said, you're right, it's a problematic topic, we won't use it anymore. And others got very upset with me. They're like, no. They were very upset with me. And they were particularly upset that they thought that it might be publicized that they were not using a good proof. So they wanted me to keep it, confidential. So I'd only sent it out, to a very small number of people. And I wrote to all those people, and I said, please don't send it on to anyone else. Of course, this was back in the year 1999, sorry, 2000, something like that, where I didn't realize, it was the early days of using email. Of course, what we all know now is if you don't want something to be sent around, never email it to anyone. Right? But I didn't know that at the time. And these people had said, one person said, oops, I'm sorry, I already emailed it on to several further people. So I said, well, please give me their email addresses and I'll contact them and ask them not to spread it further. So I did. And one of them, a rabbi in LA, he wrote back to me and said, okay, I won't send it on further, but I thought it was a really good piece of research and I'd love to meet you sometime. So a few months later, he was in Israel and I met with him. And then a few weeks after that, he said, I think there's a student of mine that I think you should meet. I was like, to go out with on a date. So I did. And the rest is history. So it's just a nice story how this topic, when I started it, I was so upset. Right? I was so devastated that it didn't work as a proof of Torah. And I got a backlash when I pointed that out to people. I was like, oh, why did I even get started with this topic? And it ended up in getting married. Best thing that's ever happened to me. So that's a nice little bit of providential things, how that worked out. Right? And perhaps that's why my wife did let me keep hyraxes in the garden. All right. So I wrote up all this. I did publish it as a book called The Camel, the Hare, and the Hyrax, which is now long out of print. I don't really have plans to reprint it because it was very, very technical and intricate work. I really just gave you the summary of it. It goes on forever, all the intricacies. The key parts about the hare and hyrax are in my encyclopedia, the Torah Encyclopedia of the Animal Kingdom, which I can recommend. Don't buy it on Amazon, though. Please buy it on the museum website, biblicalnaturalhistory.org, and you get free shipping from our office in the US. All right, I'm on my phone here, not my computer, so to see all the previous questions will be a bit tricky. Let's see if I can pull them up here. I have to turn the phone around. Moose and giraffes, are they technically kosher but impossible to shecht? Moose and giraffes are kosher and possible to shecht. The problem with giraffes is that they're very cute. Right? Giraffes are very cute. Well, they're endangered also. But there's ways to legally acquire them for slaughter, but the backlash would be too huge, so we would not be serving giraffes at any of our exotic feasts. Moose, yeah, kosher can be done. Maybe one day we'll serve a moose. Let's see, any other questions here? turkey controversy, not exactly related. No. Oh yeah, the pig. All right, the pig that chews its cud. So that's actually a myth. All right, there was a widespread belief going around about a pig that had been discovered in Indonesia that has split hooves and brings up the cud. All right, known as a babirusa. All right. In fact, it does not chew the cud. Let me show you a babirusa. Yeah. So this was interesting. Oh, I
Your
can't
picture is sideways, by the way.
sideways.
Yeah.
Still.
Yes. You started to turn it. You started.
Shoot, hold on a second. Let's try again. How about now?
It's still sideways. You started to correct it, but then it didn't. That's good. That's good. That's fine.
Good now? Oh,
Yeah.
okay. All right. For some reason, I can't see my screen right now, but can you see this, what I'm holding? So this is a babirusa, known as pig deer in the local Indonesian. And it has multiple stomachs, and also it has horns. Right? And the Gemara also says that things which have horns, if it has horns, then you know it's a kosher animal. So what's going on? So the answer is it's true, it has multiple stomachs, but it does not bring up its cud. It does not bring up. Go and ask for those horns. Let's take a look at the skull of a babirusa. So it's quite bizarre. The horns are actually tusks that as the babirusa grows, they turn over and they grow upwards and they actually pierce the skin of the top of its head and grow out through its skin. They actually wound and pierce the skin as they grow. So it's not actually horns, it is teeth. But the babirusa said it's not actually chew its cud. All right, so thank you very much for joining me for this series. I hope you'll come visit museums sometime. If not, look at our website, and we have resources on the website. We have a knowledge base with all kinds of fascinating articles. We have our exotic feast coming up before Sukkot, if you're going to be in Israel then. And if you're able to support the work that we do, in general, inspiring, educating people, but especially now during the war, giving free admission to evacuees. We had a whole group of them here yesterday, providing a lot of therapeutic benefit to children, including animal-assisted therapy programs. We're only able to do this with the support of our supporters. So if you can go into our website, biblicalnaturalhistory.org, in the donate section, anything you can do to support our work in this area would be very gratefully appreciated. So thank you again for joining me, and hope to see you all at the museum someday.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Excellent, serious, important work.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Enjoy your museum. We love it. We love coming there. Take
Thank
care,
you.
Sharon. Take care. Okay, bye-bye.
You need a video of the camel being Malegera. It's
I have
much
one.
more,
I have one. I just need to install another screen to display it on. Yeah.
Oh,
Maybe I
it's,
can
it's
tackle it
much
with
more
another video.
dramatic than what you showed.
Yeah.
What are you doing?
You hear the rooster crowing behind me? All right. Bye-bye.